The worst horror movie I ever saw was fucking great.
Hello and welcome to This May Hurt a Bit. My name is James Strayer and this is
John C. Myers.
And we're a horror franchise podcast discussing each film in popular and not so popular franchises. And today we're discussing Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation from 1995. But first, we have a returning special guest with us today. You last heard him on our show about Final Destination 2. Welcome to the show, co-host of the Flophouse podcast, Dan McCoy. Hi, Dan.
Hello.
Hi.
Tis I.
Tis Dan. It was Final Destination 2, correct?
Was it that one?
I think so.
Okay. Yeah. No, I do remember that because then I remember listening and being disappointed by how you were like not so keen on 3, which is one of my faves from that series. But
right.
I think the coming to 3 from 2, maybe I had too much high expectations, but like in the whole, 3's up there.
Yeah.
I think the first 3 are great.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I apologize. I think Jim, like, even though I'm a podcaster and I know that one shouldn't do this to other podcasters because it's not like I like it. Jim gets a lot of text from me about when I disagree with him.
Yeah, that is quite hey, that means that you're still listening, you know?
Yeah.
So that I'll take that. And there have definitely been times that I've texted you. It's been a while, but I've texted you like even in the grocery store while I'm listening to the Flophouse about some joke or some opinion you had. And I'm just like, hey, he probably said that like 2 weeks ago, how these schedules go.
Yeah, I mean, frequently I do get like an out of context text or tweet. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, yes, that was a thing that was said a while back.
Right.
Podcast. It's a weird psychological effect it has.
Yeah. Yeah. Each time we kind of pick a new franchise, especially one that's as long as this, I reach out to a handful of people and I just say, hey, do you like this one? And if you're interested in coming on, especially for a second time, what's your favorite? So why did you pick 4? And more importantly, like, what's your relationship with, Texas Chainsaw Massacre as a whole, as a franchise?
Well, I picked 4 because actually I think this may be the only one that I haven't seen.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking over all of them and maybe Texas Chainsaw 3D, which was one of the in the reboot timeline.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, did I see that one or not? Who knows? Yeah. But this is definitely of like the first track. This is the one I hadn't seen. So I was sort of curious about it. Mm-hmm. And then my relationship to it was like, I saw the first one when, like Jim and I went to the same college or our own college. And then I think that did you also do the England program just on a different year than me?
I did 1 year after you.
Yeah. So we did this England abroad program, and part of it was you could get sort of reimbursed for cultural experiences. And, when you say
60
reimbursed,
pounds.
Ooh. Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that, you or your parents are paying the school. So you're just getting some of your money back. And I think that a lot of the cultural experiences were intended to be things like that you couldn't do elsewhere, like theater, say, or a concert. But I used it to go to a lot of rep screenings because, I came from the Midwest. We just had first run movie theaters or like dollar theaters. I couldn't see old movies. And so I think it was at the Prince Charles Theater. I saw the Texas Chainsaw Massacre for the very first time after knowing its reputation for years. Although I think having a bad sense of what it is. I think that most people who haven't seen it hear the title and think of one thing. And I'm sure you talked about that, but it's like, it's a lot less of a, splatterfest and more just grimy and disturbing than I expected. And genuinely terrifying, disquieting movie. I walked out shaken and also in love with it. And then 2, I knew was supposed to be silly, and I know it has some proponents, and you guys were pretty positive about it. I find myself getting kind of bored by it halfway through. Like the goofiness, like it loses steam for me somewhere.
Sure.
No matter how much scenery Dennis Hopper chews. And then 3, I saw actually at a rep screening in Alamo here in Brooklyn a few years back with my wife, Audrey, who does not, prior to me was not like a horror movie watcher. And so I was impressed by her willingness to watch it, and having not seen any of the other movies in the series, she was actually pretty positive on it, and positive on, like, she was like, oh, this idea, like, she zeroed into sort of the central thing about Texas Chainsaw is like, you're out in the middle of nowhere, you kind of have no allies, like people who you think might be your allies usually are in on whatever weirdness is going on. Yeah, I mean, like, I thought that was a perfectly fine slasher sequel in its way. Like, I know it has some wild stuff in it, like how you pointed out, one character quite clearly dies and then comes back at the end. But,
chains out of the head
through the
it's
face.
Fine. It's nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, it is Ken Faree, so fine.
Yeah,
but
bring him back. But I was
curious. I was curious about The Next Generation, which I had not seen, despite knowing that it had McConaughey and Zellweger in it at the beginning of their careers, and being curious about that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've seen this one before, but it definitely was of that ilk of, like, I barely remembered it, and I was very much looking forward to watching this kind of with a fresher eye. I don't know why I didn't put this together until, John, you sent the Zoom link today as an email, and you said Texas Chainsaw TNG. And I just think of TNG as Star Trek, The Next Generation. So now I'm going to start thinking of it that way now. But and you'd never seen this one before, right, John?
Yeah, never had. Well, I've seen, it used to be on like Cinemax or HBO a lot. And I was kind of curious because I fell in love with the original in high school. And then whenever I just flipped by it, it was just people yelling. And I just went, I'm too late into the movie. I should start it from the top. And I just never did.
Yeah, as opposed to part 1, everybody,
which is much more sedate.
Yeah, right.
Well, that's how I knew. I'm like, well, stuff's gone off now. I must be near the end instead of, I'm 20 minutes into this movie.
They do yell pretty quickly in this movie, whether or not there's anything to yell about.
I think this movie needed more yelling and more scenes of more people yelling at the same time.
Yes.
I mean, those are the two biggest faults with this movie.
At the same time. So like a Robert Altman Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Like people talking over each other. It's what we need.
It's Altman-esque.
But yeah, this was directed by Kim Hinkle, who we'll know from as one of the original creators of the first Texas Chainsaw. And this is his only directorial credit. And he decided that he wanted to do a true sequel to part 1. So before this whole legacy sequel thing started happening in the last decade with horror, he was doing it back then. And if I remember correctly, I think part 3 issues number 2 as well.
It happened. Don't worry about it.
Right.
Like, it was a thing.
When is this movie supposed to be taking place? Because we'll get to it, but there's a thing that happens at the end that really baffled me in terms of timeline.
Yeah, it says May 22nd, 1996 for what that's worth. So
yeah, they had to change it because the movie stayed on the shelf so long. It initially said 1994.
Oh, right.
They had to update that.
Yeah.
When they turned it from The Return of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre to The Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation.
Right. And if we remember in the first one, it starts off, 1974, 1973, but they date stamp each one of these films. Yeah. So he wanted to make it a direct sequel, and he doesn't like to talk about this movie so much, but evidently there was a lot of lofty ideas in this one, whether it be self-parodying himself. That's what a lot of people are trying to say, but I don't know.
That's ridiculous. I found a couple of articles that were, and not only on like sites that are like just write whatever, we'll get clicks, but just like people's random blogs are like, well, this is actually like Kim Hinkle commenting on the current state of horror at the time, which was in a downward trend. People were getting tired of sequels, and mainstream horror wasn't doing what it was in the 80s, and trying to just like make a movie crappy on purpose. No, this guy had no idea what he was doing. He was forced into this by one of the original producers of the first one. This guy, Robert Kuhn, I think his name is, Kuhn, and like did his best, but it was like he wasn't that interested in directing this kind of film. And he has a great line about it, about like, what's on screen is what I could get and not what I wanted. That's just the way it is, especially with these low budget deals. You make do with what you can get.
Yeah.
Like he tried, and to be like, no, he was some kind of Machiavellian genius that made a shitty movie on purpose. Is like, hey, thanks. Yeah. I made it crappy on purpose.
Right.
Yeah. Glad you think it's crappy.
Yeah.
I also read that he wrote a film that's kind of a sequel to this, but it's not technically a Texas Chainsaw movie called like Butcher Boys or something like that.
Butcher Boys. Yeah, that one's hard to find, but I did find a copy, and I was kind of hoping to watch it before we talk today, but I wasn't able to get to it. But I want to do that as I want to watch that just to be even more of a completionist and fill out what that whole deal is. So I'll report back on the Butcher Boys. But yeah, so I do love just at the outset, the opening crawl just refers to
over the next several years, at least 2 minor yet apparently related incidents were reported.
Does that refer to part 2 and part 3? I'm assuming.
Yeah. But I like the idea that in part 3, where they find huge pits of like 40 some bodies, they're like, it's a minor thing. Don't worry about it. Just a blip.
A giant circus of bones underneath the Alamo circus park or something.
Right.
Texas. It's Texas.
Yeah.
I mean, if you listen to these movies, everyone in Texas is like a homicidal maniac.
Right.
Because there is this like, don't go on his land. He will just murder you without questioning. Mm-hmm. That is like brought up several times in like 3 and in this one.
Yes. Yeah. But we do begin with the radio broadcast that you can hear, which I'm always a fan of. I think it was just a few times into watching the first Texas Chainsaw movie that really started to stick out to me. And I think adds so much doom to the whole thing. Here, like, doesn't really do much, but I was happy to hear them. But then it goes into prom photos, which, of course, they had to use the famous special effect sound of the camera from the first one, too.
Yeah.
That was, and so already I think that sets it up that this is kind of, maybe it's going to be a little bit sillier or like more lighthearted. Mm-hmm. That like, we've kind of recontextualized this, but they'd already removed a key component from this. Columbia TriStar, when they got this movie, inexplicably got rid of the scene that happens right before that, where Renee Zellweger's Jenny is confronted by her like stepdad or mom's boyfriend, who basically tries to physically assert himself on her, and she fights back to sort of set up that this isn't your Sally Hardesty. This isn't. She's not just going to sit there and be punished. She's going to fight back a bit. Mm-hmm. But they got rid of it. They were just like, no, we don't need that.
Yeah, that'd be a hard way to start a movie, but you know. She gets there eventually, obviously, even without that scene. But yeah, we are introduced to our 4 teenage characters at the prom. You know, particularly Barry, who is tremendously unlikable, and
he looks like the Wiener Kid from Mad Men, like the kid that the creepy Sally's friend, who actually I think is Matthew Weiner's kid. So I think that's
creepy Wiener
correctly
kid.
A Wiener kid. Yeah. Or like that weird TikTok kid that goes to Costco with his dad. I don't for a more modern reference, but yeah, just
the other kids we want to make fun.
Yeah, there's the low. I got a list.
Yeah. No, I don't have a problem. This setup really. I got to admit, I had high hopes at the beginning of this movie, and then it was sort of a slide as it went on, because I liked this prom setup where it kind of felt like, oh, we're in a different kind of horror movie entirely. Mm-hmm. You know, the cannibal family doesn't move. You know, they don't go anywhere. So they're not going to come to the prom, but like, okay, we'll have like a prom horror movie, like wander into a Texas Chainsaw movie. And that kind of seemed fun to me at the beginning.
But I do like that. The way they get away from the prom is pretty contrived, where she just gets mad, jumps in the car, then he jumps in the car, and then they just drive off and get lost immediately. Like, I don't know where their destination is from leaving the prom, and very quickly they get lost. And the whole time Barry is being pretty despicable, but I did seriously laugh out loud and rewound it twice just to rehear him say,
"There's no place to turn around. There's never any place to turn around. This sucks. These assholes don't know how to make roads."
And that just made me laugh so hard. So I was like, man, if you ever hang out with like any of your friends that are particularly negative and they just got to find something new to be negative about in that moment, you know, it's the roads.
Not to get too real here, right at the beginning, but like as a man in middle age, and I find this is true of a lot of my friends who are of my same age, like I'm suddenly confronting a lot of my own shortcomings. You know, like there's so many times when I get mad at a thing and I make it the problem of the world rather than like I'm just frustrated about a thing. And this is such a great example of like, they were not to make roads.
I'm a fan of how much he loves science. He fucking loves science and cares about cancer. He's very concerned about his getting cancer and other people getting cancer.
He used to come over to my house all the time, and he'd be laughing about all the girls he'd built up. His big line was to tell him that his father was a doctor and that they could get breast cancer if they didn't get felt up.
Mary!
Well, I think he calls it, if a man doesn't get sex, he gets prostrate cancer.
He gets prostrate cancer. Yeah.
Which is good. Yeah, so immediately you're ready for him to get chainsawed. So yeah, where are they going? It's impossible to know. And then the camera effect gets used again as a car comes out of nowhere and they get into a collision on the road. So now I think the word iconic is rather overused, but that sound effect of the camera is something that I love so much. And now they're using it as a jump scare moment, sound effect for the car smashing into them. So we got our 4 people, Jenny, Sean, Heather, and Mary. We get kind of introduced to the character of Heather, and she's very into death. She's very into car crashes and mutilation, and always likes to talk about how she's being stalked by a serial killer and such. So this is her one personality trait.
Yeah, she is grim as hell.
Yeah.
Because if she's not talking about death, like, wouldn't it be cool if we died and someone sang a song about us?
Yeah.
She's basically like, well, if I stay alive, all I'm going to do is get married to a guy that likes me for my looks, but I have no other options.
Yeah. The other option.
Grimmest thing in this movie.
Yeah. Wonder if she's a fan of Morrissey's There Is a Light That'll Never Go Out. There you go.
Probably, yeah.
They find a mobile home office trailer, and I didn't know, like, what's this lady's business? This is Darla. So she says something about once she started hanging out with Vilmer, who we don't know yet, her sales went up by 4 times or something like that, but I don't know what she does.
This is based on entirely nothing. I just got this realtor vibe off of her that she like sold houses, although like what there is to sell out here in, chainsaw country, I don't know.
It could be used cars. Could be. And I got thinking about this. This is because this is probably not that huge since it's specific, but like tux rental. And like if you are a tux rental place and teens get murdered by a slasher, do you waive that fee? Or is that like your white whale when you're like, jackpot,
right?
You guys owe me big time.
Yes. You rented 3 tuxes and you all got chainsawed.
Yeah. I'm like imagining this like John Larroquette voiceover is like an incident where 4 tuxedos were ruined.
Only 2 cummerbunds were returned.
This is really hard to watch.
Right. So the other bit with Darla here is that some teens drive by and throw rocks at her trailer, and her solution is to flash them because it's a slasher film and we need some flashing.
What was that?
Don't worry about it. Just some farmer's wife. Like I'm even interested. See him in the least bit. Or some high school boy. They're always doing something to get me to flash them.
Yes. Well, in a very, and look, I
go on.
I have a slight pervisoid reputation on the Flophouse. I think
I'm, if I'm not mistaken,
pervisoid number 1. I think I'm a nice man, basically, who has grown into a more sensitive man than perhaps I was as a youth. But I do have a misspent youth of sort of a bit of a Mr. Skin mind, I think. And it was funny to me, this shot, like how clearly it was a body double.
Yes.
Like it was just like, we're going to just cut to some boobs that she is flashing outside.
Totally.
And it is such like a 13-year-old mindset of that of writing that character, where it's like, if I throw rocks at her window to get her attention, she'll show me her boobs.
So go do that
out of anger, to get rid of me.
Angry boobs.
Angry boobs.
It's true, but also like the movie does treat it as a little weird. Like the people there are like, I guess so. Yeah. I guess that's what you do when people throw rocks at your window. This character, I think, ends up being my favorite character in the movie because she has this loopy energy where you're I don't know what her deal is, but she seems to be having fun when she's not being, beaten up by Matthew McConaughey at least.
And it seems like the movie kind of wants to match that, but never can. Like it's really what it's going for. Mm-hmm. And the only other real big role I recognized, well, beyond being in Eminem's music video for My Name Is, playing Eminem's mom, she was in Varsity Blues as the health teacher who they find out later is a stripper. Good for Tony Parensky. There you go.
Weird juxtaposition of like jobs plus nudity, I guess, is her deal.
Yeah. If you need a sexy weirdo in Texas, call her.
Yeah. So McConaughey shows up. He's Vilmer, the tow truck driver, and he wants to check out this boy that's been laying on the ground. It's from the other car. And Vilmer just walks up and cracks his neck. But that's not even the weirdest part. He's got a robot leg. He's got like a little mech leg type of thing. And he
does have a robot
not
leg.
Expecting that in a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie.
I Know Who Killed Me land. We have high quality robot prostheses.
I have not seen that, and I know that y'all love it, but I had no idea that there was a robot leg, and I almost submitted that for a bad movie night one time. So maybe
is that the Lindsay Lohan one?
It is. I don't know whether I have Stockholm syndrome on this one, but like we watched it the first time and we're like, what is this movie? This movie's so dumb. And now I have kind of come around to thinking like, okay, this movie knows what it's doing. It's trying to be like a giallo picture, and it's adding these ridiculous elements into it. It plays weirder when it's an American movie with Lindsay Lohan starring in it. But I kind of like it now. I don't know. You should check it out.
All right, that is on my list. But yeah, that leg, and it only gets more ridiculous.
Yes.
Because I was thinking about the brace they put Leatherface in 3. Right. If this is supposed to be like a play off of that. But
well, I guess this is a clue that, the claims that Matthew McConaughey makes later have truth to them.
I guess so. Those clues tend to be few and far between.
Yeah.
Vilmer now, he gets in his truck and he finds Sean, one of the other guys, and taunts him and then manages to hit him with the truck and then reverse over him several times in the truck. And here's where I'm just going to be a jerk about the cinematography a little bit. It was so foggy and the lights were shining out from the truck. The angle of the camera, you couldn't really tell that it was going forwards and backwards. It made it just kind of look like the truck was stuck and just like trying to get out of a little pit, like rolling back and forth, but not a convincing bit for me.
Yeah, I really liked it. Like the 11 times running over a guy. My problem with it was the music. Is that a lot of, because Wayne Bell, who did the sort of the musicscape for the first one, did some of that for this. And in fact, is like, it sucked. What I did sucked. So it's fine that they replaced a lot of it with a lot of songs from Texas artists, but like putting in a lot of like the heavy metal stuff just made it seem less terrifying and more just, I don't know, goofy.
Although there is a Rocky Erickson song in this movie, and I'm not familiar enough with him, but I do want to go back and double check that scene. Heather and Barry find an ominous house, and Barry walks out back and peeks in a window to see a pretty like kind of nasty kitchen, and you're like, well, this has got to be a Texas Chainsaw kitchen. Heather just sits down on a porch scene in front, and Leatherface just kind of goes up behind her. And like, I know this is a trope in horror movies, but like, I don't know. I think everybody has that sixth sense where when somebody's right behind you. But man, Leatherface gets close, especially for how big he is, starts smelling her hair and everything. Barry can't do anything because he's being held up by a shotgun by, what's his name? W.E. is what we learned to know. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that is basically the cook. They, in fact, I guess, reached out to
Jim Sydow.
Yeah. And he was like, no. I was also probably very old at that time, but they kind of wanted to try to tie it to the first one in that way. Because it was, we talked before, it was supposed to be W.E. Slaughters.
Right.
But yeah, no, this is W.E. already spouting his quotes.
I propose to fight it out on this line if it takes all summer. That's Ulysses S. Grant. You probably didn't know that, did you? Of course you didn't. Because you're a bona fide moron.
This is the guy who is Bartlett's familiar quotations on legs.
Yes.
He just, everything is a quote.
Kim Hankel said it was like a friend's dad. I've read other reports that said it was actually Lou Perryman, who was LG in the second one and worked on the first one. that it was him and his dad would just, in the middle of arguments, just kind of as a non sequitur would say some quote. And he's like, I always loved it because it just killed the argument dead. Because like, what are you supposed to say to that? But I think they went overboard with that a little bit here.
Mm-hmm. I will give credit where credit's due here. When Leatherface finally makes his move on Heather and starts dragging her into the house, it is very much in the spirit of the first one where Leatherface goes after, can't remember her name, but the first one that he grabs back into the house. And just the physicality of this whole scene actually did kind of work for me. It did make Leatherface, at least to begin with, he seemed dangerous in this bit.
Yeah, and the mask looks pretty disgusting. I mean, it's darkened from the angle and the sort of the lighting, but it helps hide his hockey hair. Distracts from him having a horrible case of hockey hair.
That hair that he starts, I felt better about his hair once he started putting on more obvious wigs, because the early hair is so weird looking.
Yeah, it's not great. I mean, Kane Hodder had it in the Leatherface Excalibur trailer.
Yeah.
But even then, that worked better than what this Leatherface, played by Robert Jacks, is rocking.
He takes a very long time trying to get her back into the freezer. And at this point, I just started realizing that Leatherface is screaming just as much as she is. And he is moving a little bit more frenetically, kind of like he does in the first one, as opposed to like a cartoon character in part 2. But they really dial up Leatherface's screaming in this one.
I found this scene kind of funny, but and also kind of frustrating, like from a, like, what do you do in character standpoint? Like, I know that, look, if Leatherface put me in a freezer, I wouldn't be thinking that straight. But the fact that like she realizes she can get out of the freezer immediately, but she keeps like popping out while he's still in the room rather than waiting for him to leave. And then, and Leatherface, being, our simple-minded buddy, Leatherface, doesn't seem to know how to handle it for a while until he finally puts a big like oil drum on top of the thing or whatever. But I'm just like, wait until just he goes your time. And then sneak out.
Yeah. It's cold in there.
Yeah, that's true. Barry does gain entry to the house, and the house is laid out just like the house in part 1, with just the staircase going up immediately as soon as you walk inside. And he finds a bathroom, and he's starting to call for Heather. And I did love this bit where he says over his shoulder,
"There's some crazy guy outside with a shotgun. Locked him out, though. You should have seen me."
So he's already kind of like bragging to Heather about how he took care of WE.
I also love the slow reveal of like the entire suit of skin that's just hanging on the back of the bathroom. Like, you see it right away, but he doesn't. There's an interview. There's a behind the scenes documentary called The Return of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the documentary, that is just interminable, but has a scene with an interview with the two people that own the house. And the guy is like, well, my mom was born here. We didn't know it would be in the movies. It's pretty great. And the wife is dying because she's like, they don't live like us. And they tell us they're going to clean everything up. So that'll be good. That'll be very good. It was just like not happy with the state of the house, but just smiling through it. Yeah, the place is trashed.
Yeah. You never want the owner of the location to come by and see what you've done to their location. I can say that with some amount of experience. Put them up in a hotel. In the bathtub is a badly decomposed body. And then Leatherface appears and bashes Barry over the head with a sledgehammer, and he goes down twitching just like, what's his name from the first one? Gotta have that.
And Jim cheers.
Yeah.
That Barry is now
finally, he got sledgehammered. But then he grabs Heather and puts her on a meat hook. Yeah. So that had to happen, I suppose. What did you think of this versus the original meat hook scene? Because the meat hook it's an important part of Texas Chainsaw. Let's discuss putting a woman on a meat hook is what I'm saying.
She doesn't seem that perturbed about being on a meat hook. Like, she doesn't like it. Like, her feet don't touch the ground. She can't escape, but I don't know whether she's in shock. She seems pretty okay in general otherwise.
Well, it's probably like if you've ever like captured a fly in the fridge and it moves rather slow because it's cold. So it's probably she's just cold from the freezer.
Yeah.
But I don't understand why he didn't just knock her out at first. But that's between Leatherface and God, frankly. But yeah, she's still alive, but he put her on the meat hook.
For me, it was, and this is going to sound so like sadistic, but we are watching what we're watching here.
Sure.
But there's a moment when in the first one where she gets put on the meat hook, she lets out this like sigh, gasp, like moan that is so effective that I think adds to the entire scene. And just like, I can hear that in my head right now. And I think that adds so much to the first meat hook scene. And this one, she didn't have the reaction that I was kind of hoping for.
Well, I think it's like, yeah, she's not really like trying to pull herself off. It's like, well,
the whole,
I guess this is me.
Yeah.
But she is a defeatist person, as we've discussed. So
this is me. This is my life now.
This is all right.
Now I live on a meat hook.
I got captured by that serial killer, just like I said. I'll live out my days on this hook. Vilmer pulls up and he sees Jenny. So Jenny jumps into the truck, and it did kind of crack me up because as Jenny and him are driving down the road, it's obviously much more animated, but man, you got some Russ Cole going in here with that voice and driving and some True Detective. He's spouting all kinds of like, it's not as dark and decently well written or ripped off. But it is like, but it did remind me of a little True Detectivism here.
It's like EC Comics version of True Detective, like a Tales from the Crypt True Detective.
Yeah.
I heard about an old man once. Picked up a little girl on the side of the road, chopped both her arms off, and stuffed her in a culvert, left her for dead. God, I fucking hate that. I mean, that sorry son of a bitch didn't have shit for an imagination.
This, upon second viewing, this jumped out at me, this bit here. So he forces her to look in the back of the truck, and we see the two other kids that he's already taken care of. And he says something like,
Oh, God.
Yeah, of course you gotta throw in a little something extra. Just let them know it ain't Saturday morning cartoons, if you know what I mean.
So to me, this is what he's talking about. The reveal later on is what I'm guessing, right?
Yeah.
So he's performing for somebody.
Apparently.
But that went right over my head the first time.
She also like, I mean, I don't, if someone who's acting real weird is trying to get me to look in the backseat, maybe I won't, but I don't know. It's another occasion where like she's scared. Clearly something's going on, and it takes so long for her to see what's happening. Mm-hmm. Like, I guess this is more sort of speaking to the inexperience of the director, but they're like scenes where like the physical blocking of things seems like weird to me. Like people aren't having those reveals in ways that are horrifying. They just it all feels very flat and clumsy.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, and in fact, in that same Texas Chainsaw Companion, the cinematographer, Levi Isaacs, who worked on the first one as well, he'd gone on to do some like Tales from the Crypt and stuff like that. And Kim Henkel brought him in to do this. And he says that sometimes Kim let him handle, he gave me a lot of leeway. I picked the locations and oftentimes staged the scene, made lots of suggestions in terms of how to stage it. So there might have been some differing views there or whatever. But yeah, there's a lot of this where the blocking's very strange or doesn't seem to add to the scene much, or like you said, just sort of unnecessarily drags it out.
Yeah, less tension.
Yeah, well, the tension becomes get on with it versus like I'm scared of what's going to happen.
We know what's going to happen. Movie. It's a horror movie.
Yeah.
We've seen a couple of these already.
I also love though, by the way, that his truck is the side of his truck says Illuminati on it.
I mean, I didn't catch that until the second one too. Yeah. She does dive out the passenger door and runs off, and Vilmer corners her in a little tree grove with the skinniest little trees that I think might have been put there for a chainsaw to get through eventually. Vilmer leaves and it's all quiet, and who comes blazing out of the dark but Leatherface, of course, and slicing through those little tiny trees, and chases her right into the family house. And of course, Leatherface has to cut up the front door, like in the first one.
For all the fans that showed up with little flags that was like, door. I hope they do the door in this
door
one.
Door gag. I know that. She runs upstairs, and there looks to be a dead sheriff just standing up there, just standing upright.
Just like stuffed. When the camera's on her, you see like a couple of taxidermied things in the background.
Yeah.
But then, there's just this purple sheriff standing there.
So she pulls a good move, grabs his revolver, but it's out of bullets. And so she just tosses she does overhand throw the revolver at Leatherface. And then she jumps out the second story window. Now, I kind of hate to be this guy because, this shit's hard to do. But I did love when she jumps out the window. There's 2 cuts because in the first shot, she clearly is not clearing the breakaway glass so much. Mm-hmm. And so they quickly cut to another shot of her just like 30 degrees to the right. And she does like go out. So
yeah, you probably could have. Yeah, you might have been able to say that with editing, but because they just stayed a little bit too long that, you see her kind of get caught up.
Put that in the goofs, right?
Yeah. Yep.
But they have this like he chases her all over the chimney and up an antenna, and then she jumps down and shimmies over an electrical cord. Like they do a decent job of her looking so desperate, that she goes up an antenna of all things, or like shimmying across an electrical line. I thought that was decently well done.
Yeah, I didn't really get at first what he was doing with the chimney, but then I was like, I guess maybe just trying to throw the bricks at her with the chainsaw.
Oh, right. I just thought it was funny. He's like, I don't know what else to do, so I'm going to smash up this chimney.
Yeah. Fuck you, Santa.
Look at what your brother did to the chimney.
Now this is a different house though, right? Because it's supposed to be a different. I mean, obviously it is a different house, but is it supposed to be a different house? Because they like pull up and move, I guess, in one of the previous ones, even though we're sort of ignoring the previous ones.
Different house from the first movie, you mean?
I mean, it is physically a different house. Whether or not it's supposed to be is a good question. My guess is yes, because if it is that there was a survivor.
So it's not supposed to be.
Yeah.
It's asking a lot of the audience to believe that a whole woods sprung up around.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
In the court. I'm asking because I forget, it was somebody on Letterboxd. Apologies for not crediting you, Letterboxd person who
probably listens to the show.
Just someone I saw. But how they point out that these like first 4 at least all seem to be kind of just like bizarro world remixes, or the first 3 sequels are just like remixes of the first movie in a way that like you have 2 ways of doing a sequel. You either like push the film forward or you just sort of mix and match elements and shuffle them around. And like change the tone maybe. And, like you said, there's a door gag, she jumps out a window. Like we was like, oh, we got to hit all the things you expect out of a chainsaw film. And I guess those are the
a meat hook.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think there is sort of an element of that kind of oral tradition about it, of like this tale that kind of gets remixed and retold in different ways by depending who's telling it. Because there's not really a clear through line. So it's so funny that they keep referencing the other movies, even though they don't really matter for the most part.
This sets off another whole chase through the woods, and she ends up back at the insurance trailer office with Darla. And this, much like the first one, the moment where Sally realizes the cook in the gas station is not her friend. This one didn't have nearly the dread of that moment, but I feel like that's what they were going for.
No, and it's fun. And their relationship is really creepy and weird. Mm-hmm. She's like best friend, but also trying to murder you.
Now, listen. Don't you worry. Filmer does something, it's for a good reason.
Who's Filmer?
Good question. Hey, you know what? You look real pretty with your glasses off.
There's a weird... This whole movie has so much more of a sexual element than any of the other 3 previous ones that they really lean into a lot, particularly with Darla.
With her like weird sort of S&M relationship with Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah, with Vilmer. And then like just a little bit with Jenny as well.
Well, and I like, I guess we talk about elements that reoccur. I like that there's always at least one member of the family that is more functional in sort of society.
Is there a PR person? Yeah.
Absolutely bonkers.
Yeah. So Darla's elevated to that point, whereas it used to be the cook, I guess. And man, that's kind of a low bar.
Yeah. But Darla can wear like a clean blazer and hold down a job.
Yeah.
WE shows up with a cattle prod and starts going at her, enjoying it. And then we get this weird drive-through sequence. So this is another element of like, oh, there is a world outside the home in a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. There's a drive-through pizza joint. Darla orders pizza for the family, one of them being like a vegetarian, I think they call out or something like that. And Jenny's in the back in a trash bag, and she convinces her to go back and like poke a hole for air. And right as that happens, some cops come up behind her. How does she get away with it? For wiles?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
She's just kind of flirty.
She works with the cops.
Now, if I hear any more kicking or screaming, I'm going to come back here and tape your mouth shut, all right? Okay.
What you got in the car, honey?
Believe me, you don't want to know.
Well, I guess you're right. I'll just shrug. Okay.
I mean, on the one level, I kind of like this because it seems realistic that like a cop would be like, I don't know, I don't want to worry about it, and this lady was sort of flirty with me, so I'm just gonna kind of let this go. But on the other hand, like it is another one of these scenes where you can see how it's built to be suspenseful, but they don't know how to build a suspenseful scene.
Yeah.
So on the way back, Darla finds Heather on the side of the road. Remember her? She's going to find a blanket, but grabs like a log and starts hitting her in the head. And it's pretty comedic, actually. Like she's like, doesn't want to do it so much, you know?
Yeah. Again, the remixing is a play off of The Cook in the first one. And almost the shot's the same where they're backlit by the lights. But yeah, she's even more ineffectual with it. Just this very like a cartoon housewife killing a spider or something, you know, like just this very like, ooh, this is so gross. I don't want to do this.
Yeah, and the victim, I mean, like, it's sad. You know, I don't want to laugh too much, but it's also played comedically, where she's just like, don't hit me.
Just stop it. Yeah.
Well, also,
it's just annoyed.
This is Heather, too, right? So the last time we saw her, she was on a meat hook.
Yes.
So she got off the meat hook sometimes.
She's very injured. She does not want to be hit with a log. I understand.
I mean, on my best day, I don't want to get hit with a log.
Right.
Particularly
Not alone a meat hook day. We get back to the chainsaw house, and W.E. chases Leatherface out of the house with a cattle prod just as Darla arrives home with dinner, the pizzas. And man, this close-up on Leatherface and his mask hair is just pretty god-awful. This, like, it's just like this gray, boring looking. It's not even like going for skin. It just like looks at like an ashen gray piece of like cloth over his face. But he is done up more in a woman's outfit with a pearl necklace, apron. So, you know, it must be a dinner party night.
I'll ask you guys, you've watched the series more recently. Like, this is new, right? That they are Leatherface is in drag for much of this movie, or is it done in the past?
They hint at it.
Well, in the first one, he cut when the dinner scene happens or whatever. Yes, he's in a more like housewife kind of thing. And it reads more as like he just kind of has these shifting personalities as needed. Like it just sort of as the works is kind of unexplained. But this one, they really lean into his sort of his transness, basically, because they start really leaning into how he really wants this woman's face. There's a whole scene of him being all sexy in the, you know, almost more like Buffalo Bill in Silence of the Lambs. That kind of like not really trans, but not sure what else to do.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I would think at the time, you know, this would have been thought of more of like, oh, you know, this is in the whole like Ed Gein, like Psycho tradition of like, we're referencing Psycho. We're referencing like Norman having this split personality more than it's supposed to be anything about actual trans people. But now obviously it plays a lot more upsetting. Like you're trying to be like pathologizing this specifically. You know?
Yeah. And I mean, because they leaned into that too for the tagline of this one. If looks could kill, he wouldn't need a chainsaw.
Interesting.
Yeah. So they really want to like play up that sort of cross-dressing side of it a bit more.
And there was a cut scene in the first film where just before the dinner sequence, like Leatherface is putting on lipstick and like a different face, and he's putting like, tonight I'm hostess is the idea that it's supposed to be, but they cut that sequence out just for pacing, just to get right to the dinner sequence. So I guess they just, you know, Kim Hinkle liked that idea and brought it back for this one. Whatever different face he puts on, different clothes.
Yeah, and it just, I guess, just because I don't really like Leatherface doesn't do a whole lot in this movie, and is, you know, this is really much more the Vilmer show. Yeah, and so I just feel like they tried to just take elements to sort of like, oh, kind of remember this from the first one. Let's, like you said, with putting on makeup, like to give him a character, because otherwise he's not really doing very much.
Yeah, he's just kind of hanging out in the background.
Leatherface just crashing on the couch.
Inside, if we didn't guess it already, Vilmer is there, and they bring Jenny in, and Vilmer immediately just chokes her in the chair, jams his fingers into her mouth.
Do you think all I want to do is kill you?
I don't know.
You goddamn right you don't.
Then they drag Heather in, so now we've finally hit that point in a sequel where we're going to brutalize not one woman, but two in a Texas Chainsaw dinner scene. So this, from here on out, Matthew McConaughey is just over the moon, like dialed up to 11. Sometimes I like it, and then it grates on me after a while. I kind of go back and forth sometimes.
Yeah, I think the problem is mostly that, like you say, the movie is handed over to him. Like, I think that what he's doing is fine as far as it goes. There just needs to be less of it.
I didn't get on the McConaughey train probably until True Detective. And I was like, oh, okay, this guy can actually act. I always kind of thought about Failure to Launch, or, like that was just sort of what he did. And so now that I'm more on board, I was sort of excited. Yeah, like, oh, this is fun. It's fun to watch him do this, but it's a lot. If it wasn't just this, it'd be a little, definitely be more palatable.
They don't waste any time making him just so physically menacing, too. Just the way he treats Jenny and just chokes her immediately. And he is effective at being like a firecracker that you don't know is going to go off in the room at any moment. So that's, say what you will, but that works, I think. Then we get this weird scene where Darla tries to explain to Jenny that Vilmer is actually a good man, but he just has bad days, Well,
he's also upset because none of his remotes, the batteries are charged, because his leg is remote control operated.
That seems like a bad
design flaw.
It's a design flaw. Yeah.
I'm also just curious about the functionality of it. Like, why is there a tube that goes to his hips? What is it? I need some schematics, basically. Yes. But they do an effective job of it, alternating between it being a hindrance when it needs to be, but also like being a powerful tool for him to use when he needs to.
But yeah, evidently Vilmer is a part of the Illuminati, and I don't know if this is a scene where she explains it, but she goes along with it because she's convinced that he has placed a bomb inside of her head, and that can go off at any moment.
She says a lot of crazy things. She tells Renee Zellweger, because Renee Zellweger keeps being like, I don't know why you're doing this to me. Why are you doing this to me?
Yeah.
And at one point she takes her off to the side and has girl talk in the bathroom.
I really shouldn't be telling you this, but you know how you always hear these stories about these people who run everything, but nobody knows who they are, right? Well, it's true. I mean, I never would have believed it, but it's all true. I mean, who do you think killed Kennedy?
Government?
No. Government stuff is bull crap. It's these people, and they've been doing this kind of thing for like 1,000 or 2,000 years, I forget which, and nobody knows their names, and that's who Vilmer works for.
I really like that there is this element of this person is just bonkers, or what she's saying might be true.
Yeah,
you can't really be sure one way or the other if any of this is all true, but I think she sells it pretty well.
Yeah, but definitely when they're bringing up like the Kennedy assassination in a Texas Chainsaw movie, I was just like, man, we've come a long way, baby. Like we're in new territory here.
Yeah, this might be the most outside of the family movie. So I think even part 2, you're largely with like the family and what they're doing. The world outside is a couple of scenes. Like we talked about, it was mainly like, here's the radio station stuff. Now here's the underground stuff. But this one is like, Darla, you're at the pizza place. There's a guy across the street from Darla's that she's mad at or whatever. There's just a world around them. They're referencing the Kennedy assassination rather than just being this isolated horror.
Yeah.
Which I think works a little bit against it because it seems a little bit less claustrophobic. That it's just part of this larger world.
Yeah. Like it's one of these cases where I typically want, if there's going to be a sequel, like, push it in a different direction, do something new, but and this is like this series equivalent to, I don't know, like Halloween introducing like the idea that druids are involved somehow or whatever, but it does seem to cut so starkly against like what Texas Chainsaw is about, like this idea of like, oh, there's an isolated group of weirdos out in the country somewhere and they live their life how it makes sense to them, but to modern society it is monstrous, and to then have it be connected to like, oh, there's a secret society. And like, I mean, later on, we, you know, not to jump ahead too much, but we learned that it's like supposed to give them this, you know, transcendent experience in a way that like, it's like, okay, this, I guess is like proto Saw, where it's like, we're going to change your life through terrifying you. And it's a weird element to ask us to buy in movie 4, I guess.
Right.
And on the heels of that, Jenny is trying to figure out, like, she keeps saying, like, you want me alive, don't you? Like, why aren't you just killing me?
Yeah.
So that's a wrinkle, you know, in the whole final girl thing a little bit.
But I do like how Darla gets all dressed up for dinner and like that weird sort of S&M thing.
Yeah.
And then when she has the back and forth with, she has an additional back and forth with McConaughey, and she's like, I could always go back to my husband.
Yeah.
I just like that reveal. And I guess they had a problem with her where she kept like in between scenes. They actually shot this movie sequentially for the most part. But they would do like in between scenes where she'd just gotten roughed up by McConaughey, she would like go pretty herself up again.
Oh,
like, stop doing that.
Yeah, yeah.
She's like, I just don't want to be messy.
Right.
Look around you. You should be.
You know, this is where McConaughey just like really takes it up another notch and just like brutalizes everybody in the room. There's the whole like standoff with the shotgun, where she does pull the trigger. There's no shell in that barrel. It was in the other barrel, though, like that kind of thing, just through the next like 10 minutes. And I think this is where the movie hits that kind of unpleasant level, or it's like really starting to kick into that unpleasant level. He does use his robo-foot again on Darla's neck. And then Jenny escapes again. I think she escapes like a good 4 or 5 times in this and is just repeatedly like pulled back in, this time by Leatherface again.
Yeah, then this launches us into the dinner scene, which you have to have in a Leatherface movie. They have. I'm assuming this is the dress earlier that Darla mentioned. She had a dress that would look great on Renee Zellweger in the style I like to call sexy designing women.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, big shoulders and some a cleavage window.
Yep, some harsh angles.
Just like Delta Burke.
So Vilmer does enter the scene saying, all right. Vilmer announces that his brother wants a new face. So this is where we're getting a little bit more into like, we're going to carve her face off for Leatherface, who's sitting there nice and patient. Along
with some other family that they've killed and just put there.
And Grandpa.
And I'm guessing that's supposed to be Grandpa. I swear to God, I thought it was Brother Theodore, that actor from The Burbs at first. I had to look it up. It's not. It's just some guy. And
yeah, makeup is not as good on the Grandpa this time.
Yeah, he kind of looks like community theater Yoda. Yeah. It's not very good.
Yeah, they do have I like that they do have like seat fillers.
Yeah. They couldn't be here. The rest of the family couldn't be here.
Use the carpool lane.
Totally. As WE's incessantly quoting this whole time, Vilmer finally just like goes off and smashes him in the face with a hammer, puts his own brother down. Had enough of that. And then Vilmer just sets Heather on fire. Which Darla quickly puts out. So he's like in full sadistic mode here. It's like, it's sadistic in a different way than the first one, where they're just kind of like screaming at Sally for a long time. And this one, like he's actually like beating up on them and causing harm and that kind of thing.
I feel like he's also just sort of just doing it to do it.
Yeah.
There's no real end to it.
Right.
And again, none of it is particularly suspenseful or scary. It's just kind of like, now we're into like, as you said, I think sort of like the sustained unpleasant.
Yeah. I mean, because the first one, at least the dinner scene and the horror and all the terror that's happening there is because you don't know what's going to happen next. And this one, it's not that you don't know, you don't particularly care. And it is just like, well, okay, if he's not going to brutalize this person, he's just going to brutalize this person and whatever. There's not a lot of tension there until their special guest arrives.
Yeah, this is where it really goes off the rails officially. 2 distinguished gentlemen, one named Rothman, shows up at the house. He starts to comfort Jenny for a bit. And of course, it's going to go sideways because, there's nobody coming to help you in a Texas Chainsaw movie. Guy tells Vilmer that this situation is appalling.
It's very simple. I want these people to know the meaning of horror. Horror. Is that clear? You don't want to be a silly boy. Is that clear?
My main question is, like, if that's his main goal and this is not working, what's his idea of it working? Because this is pretty horrifying in a lot of ways. Like, what does he want to happen here?
This is essentially Matthew McConaughey's manager has showed up. He's like, you're not doing horror right. But he doesn't offer a way forward. He's not like, look at the employee handbook. Like, these are the accepted ways to make people scared. You know, he's just like, well, I'm just going to be here and be sort of cryptic, and then I'm going to go.
Well, same thing. Speaking of leaving, real quick, right in the scene before this, after McConaughey zaps WE or whatever, clocks him in the face, leaves, Grandpa just picks up a knife and exits the film. He just walks out of the film. He's like, you think he's going somewhere? No, don't worry about it. He's just gone now. Yeah, I don't understand. Like you said, it's supposed to be like this transformative horror experience, but also, one, this is a long way to go for that.
Mm-hmm.
Two, how does Heather fit into that at all? Like, it doesn't make much sense. This seems very much like a story you would hear from like a guy whose main skill is doing Zippo lighter tricks, where it's like, there's a twisted killer, but guess what? He works for the Illuminati. There's more to it. And it's like, oh, sure, man. That's great. Be quiet. Woodstock 99 is going on. I want to hear Limp Bizkit.
He's got very Woodstock 99 scars and big, piercings hanging out of his belly.
Were those supposed to be nipples?
I don't know. He's got the triple nipple down here.
There.
So he's got 5
just
nipples.
Show that.
Yeah.
That's horrifying. That's way more horrifying than anything else that's gone on.
Yeah. Some close-ups. Right. Yeah. I don't know what to make of these guys. And this is so clearly just like an idea that was had. Like, it did make me think of Martyrs later on, which is not a pleasant watch either, but I think they did it better than Texas Chainsaw 4.
There's potential there to be like, well, what if where the first one, it just sort of seemed like there was no real purpose to all. Like, obviously there was the family was eating the corpses and stuff like that. But this was like, what if there was a larger purpose for this? And, maybe you could go a class-based thing where it's like, well, the rich just want to see this. We're just puppets to them, whatever. You could even do sort of a meta thing where it's, it's the horror audience that wants it. This sort of Michael Haneke, screw you audience.
Yeah.
Or that it's the producers of the Hollywood system doing this. It's none of that. It doesn't even kind of glance at a lot of that.
Yeah.
And so it's just this additional weird element.
Yeah. This is an idea I don't think you can graft onto a pre-existing thing. This idea has to exist on its own. And if you're doing it grafted onto, like, the way to do it pre-existing is something like Cabin in the Woods, where it's like, yes, there is this greater purpose, and we're using all of these horror tropes. Like, it was like, okay, well, like, what's going to do it this time? What are we going to pull down off the shelf, of horror? Right. Like, that makes sense as a meta thing, but you can't just drive in from another movie and be like, here's another idea. Like, no.
But I mean,
we were having a movie. We had our own movie going around here.
Don't hijack our movie. But this did come out in the mid 90s. And so right around then would have been, when did Scream come out? We've got our kind of meta ones, and like, I think there's a Nightmare on Elm Street that's like set in the real world or something too. That's different than an Illuminati subplot, but I think that was like, maybe they were trying to go for some sort of meta movie type of deal.
Whatever it was, it didn't land.
Yeah, did not land.
Just, like you said, it just feels like another movie just sort of drives up and is like, what's going on over here?
Well, it opens up so many questions that like are not explained, and not explained in that cool horror way where like, oh, it's scarier if you don't know. Like, it's just like, you're like, no, this breaks the logic. I don't. Wait, why?
So it's like, but like particularly because for a lot of reasons, but Darla mentions, sort of references this, and you're not sure whether or not it's true. It seems like the ramblings of an insane person. But then if it is true, does the rest of the family get paid for this too? What's their whole thing? Because he's like specifically talking about Vilmer and just It's just none of it makes much sense.
How do they pick their victims?
Yeah.
Like, were they was somehow Renee Zellweger like manipulated into being here, or do they just like once a carload of victims arrives, they're like, okay, that one's the final girl.
Yeah,
like, like what do they do?
Yeah. I think you'd want to do it blind. Otherwise, you might taint your results. Unless you're testing, perhaps a specific, like, I want, tough but vulnerable teen girl fear. That's what we're shooting for.
That's
this
very
week.
specific. Yeah. Other things of note about the dinner table sequence to me, I thought they're just having takeout pizza instead of, cannibal chili or whatever they're serving in the first ones.
Berry.
Yeah. That has to be purposeful. I don't know what the message is there, but that's a choice that was made.
Yeah.
It's the way society has degraded, like we used to make our own cannibal food.
You can't even eat a guy anymore.
Yeah, we used to do home cooked family meals, and now we just do takeout. Mm-hmm. At this point, too, Jenny, I think this also has to be on purpose to me, too, because as Jenny's starting to make an escape and as Leatherface starts to go after her, she just straight up tells him, like, sit down and shut up or something like that, which obviously would never happen in the first one or any of the others. So that's obviously a distinct choice. I mean, maybe that's where people try to feed into this idea of like Hinkle's going meta on his own or parodying his own stuff. But I didn't get that. I just got it as like she's kind of coming into her own, maybe.
I think that's really what it's supposed to be. And I think like that it just sort of feeds into the sort of ineffectiveness of Leatherface this time around. Like Leatherface is so much more put upon. Whereas in the first one, there's this play of it of him being this terrorizing force and then kind of getting emasculated in a sense by the family and other violence happening there. But this is just constantly throughout it. He's just getting zapped and prodded and yelled at. So it just seems like he's very, I'll come at you, but if you say something mean to me, I will shut up.
I'll cower. Yeah.
We all get older, we get more ineffectual,
less
and
effort.
People laugh at us.
Less effort put out for what we used to enjoy, killing,
taking skins.
Through all this mayhem too, Vilmer does step on Heather's head with his robo-foot, and that
was the most effective kill for me. Yeah.
Just behind you don't see it, but he's just like crushing down on her face.
You just see his expression and you hear the noises. And I thought that was pretty ghoulish.
Yeah. Jenny does get away by getting her hands on a couple of remotes and making McConaughey's robo leg freak out, which fine,
they have a remote battle.
A remote battle. And the whole time, I don't know what Leatherface or Darla are doing. They're just kind of like sitting around or like crawling towards her or something like that. Everybody's just, again, pretty ineffectual. And she does manage to run outside. We get to kind of like a final chase scene, much like in the first film. This sweet old couple in an RV.
My favorite characters, the Spottishes.
Yes.
Mr. and Mrs. Spottish.
So
I gotta say, I do like what I like about these characters is typically in a horror movie, when you have a character like this, they're like helpful or unhelpful, right? Like there's like, they're like, they want to help and then they get killed, or they're like the horrible people who are like, don't stop. And then like, that's all they do. Here, like, I think it was much more reasonable to like actual life in a weird way where she's like, don't stop. And then she like looks at it. She's like, oh, she's being chased by a man with a chainsaw. Come in, dear.
Yes.
We will help you.
They're also serving Bloody Marys in there too, which made me happy.
Big Las Vegas style bones of Bloody Marys.
It's also, morning by now. So they've been up all night.
Spottishes like to party.
Yeah.
They've been all up all night doing speedballs.
Does manage to jump inside. And then another just massively inexplicable thing happens while there's this, you could all, maybe it's just because I watched Furiosa a couple of weeks ago, this like very Mad Max style RV next to a tow truck, and then a plane comes out of the sky. Real George Miller effectiveness. Yeah. This crop duster plane just flies down and propellers Matthew McConaughey in the forehead, kills him, makes purple blood come out too. That was a choice.
Do we think that this is the Illuminati cleaning up their mess somehow? Because otherwise it is so oddball that out of nowhere, a plane just shows up and accidentally kills one of the main antagonists.
Like drives at them for a while.
Yeah.
Doesn't try to evade them or something like that. So I guess, it's or the Illuminati like commanded that guy in that moment to, I don't know.
It's like Rothman leaves their house, goes out to his limo, calls in a hit by crop duster plane, because that's the most effective way he's got out there, this all powerful man. But I choose to believe that it's more of an Illuminati thing than I do like a random disgruntled pilot, limo pulls up and Jenny jumps in, much like Sally in the first one, gets her way out. Rothman is in the back seat and he goes off on this other soliloquy about, I'm so sorry it wasn't meant to go down that way. Again, how did he want it to go down? I still don't know. Offers to take her to either a hospital or a police station. So he's being real nice about it.
I think that adds to that confusion of it being this, well, he made this meta bad movie on purpose, because he does kind of have this directorial voice of like, hey, I wanted it to turn out one way and it absolutely didn't.
It's been an abomination. You really must accept my sincere apologies. It was supposed to be a spiritual experience. I can't tell you how disappointed I am. I suppose it's something we all live with. People like us who strive for something, a sense of harmony.
But he's very non-committal and not like, well, you survived, here's some money or something. He's just like, no, I'll take you to the hospital. It's fine. And
and he's like, this was supposed to be this transcendent experience for you, and it didn't work at all. And I'm like, dude, I don't know how you thought this was going to go.
Show me an example of what you're going for with somebody else, please.
I'll know it when I see it. I don't know what I'll know when I see it.
Give me a PowerPoint of what's your prospectus on?
Have you succeeded in the past in flaying somebody and making them feel spiritual?
What are your action items for this?
Yeah.
But going back real quick, we glossed over. Yeah, Matthew McConaughey has purple blood.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's just true to life.
Yeah, I guess.
That's McConaughey.
I mean, at this point, it's like, why not? Yeah. Guess what? He has that too.
Right. And it is such a presence as McConaughey is in this film. Like you kind of want somebody of that caliber to get a cooler death scene, whether it be at the hands of the final girl. But this just seemed like kind of insult to injury. Like he didn't even get like a cool chainsaw death or anything like that.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody got a cool chainsaw death in this movie. Like not one single one.
I kind of now want to go back and try to reverse engineer something where this is all about how Matthew McConaughey is the Grimace.
He's got purple.
Yeah, I gotta think on this. Yeah. We'll save it for the Patreon.
Yeah, get back to us. So they end up at a hospital. They drive off. In the background, of course, Leatherface does I guess you can say, doing a chainsaw dance. I kind of like the close-ups of Leatherface in this moment because it just, especially in the bright morning light, Leatherface looks so different than he's ever looked before and so bizarre that I like one or two of those shots, but it's just nowhere near the weirdness.
It felt like such a wan chainsaw dance though. I know what you guys expect out of me. She got away, I gotta do a little dance with my chainsaw. Well, here it is. Fine.
I get it.
I'll say my catchphrase.
It's this whole just very just wimpy Leatherface, just I guess just ineffectual, this Morrissey Leatherface.
So Jenny's at the hospital and we see somebody wheel by on a gurney. They try to connect this to that's Sally from the first one. And of course, the cop that's talking to her is the actor who's Franklin from the first movie.
The cop that's talking to her was Grandpa.
Grandpa, okay. But
Franklin's pushing
Sally.
The cart.
There we go.
Yeah.
Hey, they really switched those two things up there. Franklin is now the pusher, was the pushee. Yeah. Think about it.
This was kind of the final straw for me. Like at the very end of the movie, I'm just like, what? Oh, but this is clearly decades later. And now the victim from the first movie is being pushed by, and you're supposed to be like, you know who that is? Like, and I'm like, but what? did she get terrorized again by the Illuminati?
Yeah.
Concurrently to what we're seeing, they're like, oh, that didn't work the first time around either. So we got to try running her through her paces. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. And then like he's pushing her out this like super bright exit door.
Yeah.
It's like, so they're done with her. She gets to escape because someone else has replaced her. They really want this to mean something. Yeah. And it has no footing to do anything. It's just like, hey, check it out. It's Sally.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Yeah.
Sure is Sally.
Yeah. That sigh was a very good description for how this movie ends.
Ends and not a chainsaw, but a whimper.
Now I'm closer to death. Thank you, movie. That killed some time.
Well, with that, let's honor our dead, please. I'm Not Hurt, played by Vince Brock. Neck snapped by Vilmer. Sean, played by John Harrison. Run over repeatedly by Vilmer. Barry, played by Tyler Cohn. Hit with sledgehammer by Leatherface. W.E. Slaughter, bashed in the head by Vilmer. Heather, hung on meat hook, then head crushed by Vilmer's robo-leg. Vilmer Slaughter, hit in the head with airplane propeller. All right, that's part 4. I mean, we have a saying on here, Dan, you might recognize, of this is a long way from Baghead. As in, this has gotten a long way from where we've begun, using the metaphor from the Jason series. So I don't know. Again, the question is always like, do you want something crazy or do you want it to follow more of the original paces? But I think that this crazy just did not work in the end for what they were going for.
You gotta, if you're gonna pile on a bunch of new stuff, you gotta really work to integrate it. Like I've been watching the Chucky series, and you know, as I said, Audrey's not like a horror person, but I inform her as a dutiful nerd husband. Yes. I give her a lot of information she doesn't care about. And I'm like, and you know, sometimes I hit on a nugget she's actually interested in. And one of them was like, so in the weird convoluted Child's Play mythology, like Jennifer Tilly is in it as the actress Jennifer Tilly, who has been possessed by Tiffany, Chucky's girlfriend. And you know, then I texted her excitedly, like, oh, in this episode of Chucky, the actress Jennifer Tilly is being visited by her friends Gina Gershon and Joey Pants, and Meg Tilly shows up in it too. You know, man. Yeah. And that's an example of just like piling on stuff. And I love those movies because they treat all of it as canon. Like the fact that like Don Mancini has been involved since the beginning. And so they're like, it's all part of it, you know, and we're just going to make it work, as opposed to this where it's like, this doesn't make any of it work. And I don't know if you sort of like, I listen to the show regularly. I think I've listened to all of it, and I'm still like, I have no idea whether you sum it up at the end, but
guess what? We're not going to be able to answer that question.
Yeah. Just more of a final thoughts type of thing. One quick question. If the Chucky series, do you have to have watched all the movies to get it all?
You kind of do, but you kind of, I mean, like it pulls from all of it. But
because I have wanted to watch the TV series, but then I thought like, I'll just wait to jump into that when we do the Chucky movie series on the show.
Yeah, do it that way. I mean, you're going to get around to it eventually. Like that's, you know, that'll be a really fun series for you guys.
Definitely.
But no, all I was going to say was just like, I was reminded on Letterboxd that I did rate the Michael Bay, not directed but produced Texas Chainsaw okay when I saw it again in the theater. Like, I think it's interesting how like nostalgia makes us like things that we didn't like at the time, because we're like, well, this is bad, but it's bad in a very specific way that I can pinpoint to 2000 whatever.
Definitely.
And now I kind of enjoy revisiting it. And you know, anything in the theater is better. So I did kind of enjoy that, but in general, like the best I can say about this is like, I prefer watching this goofball weirdness to like how the series got really grim and not self-important, but just like
grimdark.
I don't know, joyless.
Yeah.
As it got rebooted. So that it's got that going for it. It's interesting to talk about.
Yeah. I have not seen a movie like this before. I mean, I've seen a crappy movie before, but but like all these crazy elements just thrown at it. It's just unfortunate, that it's just sort of not. It could be so much better. Like these elements have something to them that if you could turn it into some kind of gumbo, that'd be great. But I just don't think Kim Henkel was up to the task.
Yeah. And just, watching McConaughey and Zellweger was certainly fun, I think. And I think she's a great final girl. I mean, she's no Sally, but she's got something going on with her. And I do appreciate that after all these years, both of them who are now giant stars have been just like, no, it was tough, but I like that experience. Like that was important. Like put me through the ringer early in my career to learn about filmmaking.
I was wondering about that. I was earlier while we were talking, I was imagining them like both being like seeing each other across the way at like
the Oscars,
or something, and McConaughey just like pointing at her and being like, "New generation,"
or walking up and putting his finger in her mouth.
Well, so apparently there was a whole thing where like they made this thing and they couldn't sell it. New Line, after Leatherface tanked, didn't want anything to do with it, and Columbia TriStar was like, "Oh yeah, sure, we'll take it." They sat on it for a while, and the producer Robert Kuhn and Kim Henkel ended up suing because they were convinced that creative artists, CAA, whatever that stands for, the agency, because in that, like not too long after this initially was supposed to come out, Zellweger and like Jerry Maguire happened, Matthew McConaughey got super big. That there was a story that CAA was like, we don't want to sully their reputation. And you'd be unfairly using their names to promote this movie, which doesn't make any sense. But that's not even clear that that's the case. And also that the people that owned, one of the guys that owned the estate for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original movie, sued Henkel and the other guy because like he wasn't getting the return on his investment because they hadn't gotten any money yet because the movie hadn't come out. And there is a story that it was originally the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Return, and then they re-edited it and became The Next Generation. They didn't really. All they did was take out that one scene and kind of rearrange some stuff. And it just sat on the shelf for a long time until they dumped it in like 23 theaters total. Man. And so no one cared about this movie and whatever. And so they ended up dropping all the lawsuits, or it all just went away. But there's never been any confirmation that indeed like Matthew McConaughey or his agency was like, you cannot release this movie. This will make our guy look bad. And they, as you said, they both have on record way after the fact been like, yeah, it was fun. Yeah. It was a weird experience. It was a good time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, it's not that, I mean, plenty of actors have a ton of vanity about stuff, but I do feel like people who like, they both came up, they were working actors. They came up through the ranks. Like, I feel like they're the kind of people who would be just like, yeah, it's a thing I did, but it is totally plausible to me that an agency would be like, no. Do not do this, please. And by please, I mean, we will make you not do it.
Right. Yeah, I always think of Jamie Lee Curtis talking about the movie Virus, where she's like, you do these movies so you can go, oh, yeah, you were in that? I was in this. This was a terrible movie.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that's going to about do it. Part 4 down. Next week, we'll go into the remake and, see, as I've said on this show before, during this series, like this was the one I was excited to get to, and I'm a little less excited to watch through all the grimdark. But we volunteered for this, and who else is going to do it? So got to do it.
Yep, it's your job now. You're cursed.
Yeah. Right. Dan, thanks for coming on the show. Do you want to tell the fine folks where they can find you or the Flophouse or what's going on over at the Flophouse? And if you haven't listened to the Flophouse, you should really give it a shot. It's 3 actually really funny people talking about bad movies, and it's not always horror, but
Thank you for my co-host Elliot is a employed TV comedy writer. I have been employed as a TV
and will be again,
and hope to be again. And Stuart is just the most charming fellow. So you can find us at the Flophouse at flophousepodcast.com, I believe, or just, people just look up things on iTunes, punch the Flophouse in there. You'll find it. Just because we talked so much about Child's Play, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that we just talked to Tom Holland, the co-writer along with Don Mancini and director of Child's Play. And that episode will be released tomorrow as we're taping this. I'm sure it'll be out by the time this episode comes out. So if you want to hear us talk to Tom Holland about his career and about Fright Night and a bunch of other stuff, we did that. And yeah, we got a streaming show coming up where we talk about 3 Men and a Baby with our friend Hallie Hagland that we had professionally shot and edited, and it looks great. So
awesome.
That'll be fun too. Yeah,
I love that. You get a relevant plug coming on here. The Fright Night and Child's Play connection. Love that. Yeah.
Well, also, he did he wrote the vastly underrated Psycho 2.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was funny. I was texting with Stuart earlier today just about other stuff, and I said, I'm about ready to talk to Dan about Texas Chainsaw 4, and he just wrote back in all caps, I hate that movie.
That's our Stuart.
Yep, exactly. All right. Well, thanks so much again for coming on, Dan. And we'll have to have you on again for another franchise. What's another franchise looking down a year or two that you have a strong affinity for that we can get you on record to come back for?
I mean, we mentioned it before. I would love to be on for one of the Child's Plays. I think that's a really fun series, basically front to back. And also, I think if you do zombies like the George Romero zombie, I got confirmation from you, Jim, that included in that an offshoot would be Return of the Living Dead. I think you should. It may be too much chaos, but I think you should try and get both me and Stuart on there because we're both big partisans of that movie.
Yeah,
but if it doesn't happen, I won't take it personally.
It would be terrible to have two talented, funny people on this podcast. It would be the worst. We can't allow that to happen.
Right.
No, I appreciate it.
No, I've been saying that, like, I wanted to just start slowly letting both of you know what our download numbers are for each of your individual episodes, just so you'll both come back more and be like kind of a fight. Yeah. So,
sure.
But if we have you both on one, it can be, the final conflict,
Yeah, coming. Oh, I thought yours were coming back together.
Maybe it should be.
No, it's Thunderdome. It's Thunderdome. Sorry, we're not beyond Thunderdome.
Right.
Too bad.
All right. Until next week, you can find us on Instagram at This May Hurt a Bit Pod, and you can find us on YouTube at Hurt a Bit Pod, and you can email us at thismayhurtabitpod@gmail.com. And why don't you give us one of those 5-star reviews somewhere too? That always helps. Just 5 stars. If you're not going to give 5, just don't even bother. You can write me and tell me about it. Just don't mess up our tiny algorithm, please. All right. We'll see you next time.
Good night.
This has been a Caretaker Press production. It was produced by James Strayer and edited by John C. Myers. Logo by Ethan Kimberling and music by Michael Arthur Holloway, who you can find on Bandcamp. Follow us on Instagram at thismayhurtabitpod and email us at thismayhurtabitpod@gmail.com. Give us a 5-star review over on your favorite podcast app, and we'll see you next time.